The morning I legally adopted my son, I sat in a Missoula courthouse, the 3 rows of mahogany benches behind me starkly empty. My parents and my sister had orchestrated a formal boycott of the hearing. My father, a man who treats our Montana family tree like a thoroughbred registry, had told me to my face that no stranger would ever inherit Dixon land. They wanted me to sit in that echoing room and feel the crushing weight of their absence, to panic and hand the boy back to the state. But as the judge struck his gavel, sealing the adoption forever, I just smiled. Because here is what my family did not know. The sick little boy sitting on my hip was not a stranger at all. I had the medical records and a private DNA test locked in a safe at home. When my parents finally crashed my celebration lunch hours later, desperate to save their public image, they looked down into the baby's blue eyes and saw the one secret they had spent a fortune trying to bury. The Missoula County Courthouse smelled of floor wax and radiator heat. It was a Tuesday morning, and the oak bench beneath me felt cold through my skirt. I sat in the second row of courtroom 3B, balancing a 14-month-old boy on my hip. Leo gripped a stuffed corduroy bear by one ear, his thumb resting near his lower lip. Behind me, 3 rows of seating stretched, utterly vacant. Not a single winter coat draped over a railing. Not a clearing of a throat. Just the hum of the air system pushing warmth through iron grates. My phone vibrated in the side pocket of my leather tote. I didn't need to guess the sender. I shifted Leo to my other side, retrieved the device, and glanced at the lock screen. It was my old sister Vanessa. The text read, "Hope you are happy playing savior, Mom is in tears." I read the text twice. I didn't type a reply. I didn't sigh or shake my head. I simply pressed the side button, turning the screen black, and slipped the phone back into the bag. A year ago, a message like that would have sent a spike of adrenaline into my throat. I would have drafted a dozen apologies, trying to bridge a gap they had intentionally widened. Today my pulse remained steady. The silence in the courtroom felt less like an absence and more like a moat I had finally drawn up around myself. "Nora Dixon," Judge Miller called out. He was a stern man with silver hair and reading glasses perched near the tip of his nose. He flipped open a manila folder on his elevated desk. "We are here for the finalization of adoption for Leo." I stood up, my heels clicking against the linoleum. 2 of my coworkers from the pediatric clinic, Sarah and Mark, sat in the front row. They offered quiet, encouraging smiles. They were the entirety of my section. "Miss Dixon," the judge continued, peering over the rim of his glasses toward the gallery behind me. He noted the vacant benches. A brief flicker of pity crossed his eyes. "It appears your support system is intimate today." "It is exactly who needs to be here, Your Honor," I replied, my voice holding no tremor. Judge Miller nodded, adjusting his posture. He read through the standard declarations, the rights, the responsibilities, the permanent legal transfer of guardianship. Every word echoed off the high plaster ceiling. "Then by the authority vested in me by the state of Montana," he said, lifting the wooden gavel, "I declare this child legally yours." The sound of the wood striking the block was sharp and final. Leo flinched slightly at the noise, burying his face into my neck. I rubbed his back, smelling the faint trace of oatmeal and baby shampoo. My family had staged this boycott as a punishment. My brother Spencer was currently running for state senate on a family values platform, and my parents treated his campaign like a royal coronation. 6 months prior, sitting around our mahogany dining table, I had announced my intention to foster a sick child with the goal of adoption. My father had slammed his fist down, rattling in the crystal wine glasses. "Choose the stray or choose the family," he had demanded. I chose the baby. They believed their absence today would cast a shadow over my life. They thought they held all the power. They had no idea that the ink drying on Judge Miller's decree didn't just give me a son. It legally locked them out of the most devastating truth they had ever hidden. I pushed the heavy brass doors of the courthouse open and stepped into the crisp Montana morning. The frost in the air bit at my cheeks, offering a sharp reminder of the season. I tucked the thick wool blanket tighter around Leo, shielding his fragile chest from the wind as we walked toward the parking lot. The manila folder containing the signed judicial decree sat heavy in my leather tote bag. It consisted of just a few sheets of standard legal paper, yet it carried the dense, irreversible weight of a severed dynasty. To understand why those 3 rows of mahogany benches remained vacant during the most important moment of my life, you have to understand the specific gravity the Dixon name holds in this valley. We are not just comfortable. My father, Richard Dixon, owns half the commercial skyline. Driving through our town means passing endless rows of pristine subdivisions, luxury retail complexes, and sprawling office parks, all bearing our surname engraved on polished slate signs. My father operates under the steadfast delusion that he is modern royalty. He traces our lineage back to the early copper pioneers, treating our bloodline like a sacred, exclusive trust. You do not marry into our family without a rigorous background check. You certainly do not bring an orphaned ward of the state into the fold. My brother Spencer serves as the golden manifestation of this obsession. He is 34 years old, favors tailored suits paired with expensive leather boots that have never touched actual mud, and possesses a bright, rehearsed smile engineered for campaign flyers. He is currently running for the state Senate. His political platform rests heavily on traditional family values, preserving local heritage, and protecting the vulnerable youth of our state. The bitter irony of that last talking point is a pill I have been forced to swallow in silence for over a year. He is the heir apparent, groomed since childhood to inherit the empire. My older sister Vanessa plays the role of the devoted socialite, hosting charity luncheons and curating an impeccable social media feed to polish the family crest. Then there is me. I manage operations at a local pediatric clinic. I wear practical flat shoes, drive a sensible 9-year-old sedan, and flatly refuse to participate in the country club theater my mother choreographs. I was already the resident disappointment long before Leo entered the picture. Choosing to foster a sick child was merely the final strike that shattered their tolerance. 6 months ago, I attended the mandatory Sunday dinner at my parents' sprawling estate. The dining room is a cavernous, intimidating space dominated by a 12-foot mahogany table. Heavy silver cutlery clinked softly against fine porcelain china. The air smelled of roasted lamb, fresh rosemary, and the expensive beeswax candles my mother imports from a boutique in Seattle. The tension at these weekly gatherings is always thick, requiring a delicate balance of carefully chosen words and practiced smiles. That evening, I announced my intention to foster a child with severe asthma and a congenital heart defect, with the ultimate goal of adoption. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint clinking of ice in my father's whiskey glass. My mother, Diane, finally spoke, her voice laced with a saccharine condescension. "Nora, darling, we admire your charitable spirit, but surely there are other ways to contribute. A child with such complex needs, it's a tremendous burden, and an orphan, dear. What would people say?" My father, Richard, slammed his fist on the table, rattling the crystal wine glasses. "This is not a charity project, Nora. This is about the Dixon name. You will not bring a ward of the state into this family. It's an insult to our lineage, to everything we've built. Choose the stray or choose the family." I looked at him, at my mother's horrified expression, at Vanessa's dismissive shrug. "Then I choose the stray," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled beneath the table. The next 6 months were a blur of cold shoulders, thinly veiled insults, and outright threats. My father froze. "Trust." My mother spread rumors about my unstable emotional state, and Vanessa simply stopped returning my calls. They believed they could break my resolve, that the isolation would force me to conform. They didn't know that their rejection only solidified my decision. After the adoption, I drove Leo and my 2 colleagues, Sarah and Mark, to a small bistro on the edge of town. It was a place my family frequented, a place where I knew Spencer was having a campaign lunch with a local journalist. I had planned this. I wanted them to see Leo, to see me, thriving despite their boycott. I wanted them to see the truth, not in a private confrontation, but in a public space where their carefully constructed facade could crumble. The bistro was bustling, filled with the murmur of conversations and the clinking of silverware. We found a quiet alcove near the back, away from the main dining area but with a clear view of the center table where Spencer sat, his practiced smile firmly in place. Leo, dressed in a bright blue sweater that perfectly matched his eyes, gurgled happily, oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. My heart pounded, but my hands remained dry. A year ago, being in the same room as my brother would have triggered a suffocating wave of anxiety. I would have lowered my head, hoping to escape unnoticed. Today I felt nothing but a cold, measured tranquility. I possessed the signed court decree in my bag. I possessed the private laboratory results, the property tax records, and the security footage inside a thick envelope. I was not the black sheep sneaking into the pasture. I was the architect of the trap, sitting quietly while the prey enjoyed his final meal. We ordered our food. Leo chewed on a piece of soft bread, his bright blue eyes scanning the unfamiliar environment. The blue sweater worked perfectly, making him look like a miniature, undeniable portrait of the man sitting 40 feet away. I waited for Spencer to casually glance in our direction. I wanted him to see the ghost of his past sitting in the flesh. I wanted the realization to seep into his bones before I ever uttered a word. But the first strike did not come from the center table. The dynamic of the room shifted subtly. The hostess stationed at the front entrance stepped aside with a wide, deferential smile. The heavy glass doors swung open again. My mother Diane walked into the bistro, flanked by my father Richard and my sister Vanessa. They were not scheduled to attend Spencer's campaign lunch. They were here for their own midday social hour. My father handed his cashmere coat to the attendant, adjusting his expensive watch. My mother scanned the dining room to locate her golden son. Instead, her eyes swept past the center table and locked directly onto my alcove. The temperature in my immediate vicinity seemed to drop 10 degrees. My parents had spent the morning actively boycotting the legal formation of my family, hiding behind their pride. Now, seeing me sitting in their territory, looking unbothered and content, I watched the indignation flash across my father's features. The collision I had orchestrated was about to begin earlier than anticipated. They were marching straight toward my table, unaware that the cage doors had already locked behind them. The approach was deliberate and aggressive. My father led the charge, his heavy footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of the dining room. My mother walked half a pace behind him, her posture rigid, her chin elevated. My sister Vanessa trailed them both, holding her smartphone, already scanning the room for familiar faces who might witness the interaction. They did not march over to my alcove because they regretted their absence at the courthouse. They approached because my father could not tolerate a scenario he did not control. Richard Dixon operated on a simple principle. If a family member existed in a public space, they existed as a reflection of his brand. Seeing me dining with my clinic staff and a ward of the state in his preferred establishment was an unacceptable breach of decorum. But as they closed the distance, my mother noticed the occupants of the center table. She saw Spencer. More importantly, she saw the capital city journalist sitting across from him. The reporter had a digital voice recorder resting near his water glass and a notebook open on the table. I watched Diane's expression shift in a fraction of a second. The cold, aristocratic disdain dissolved into an expression of profound, fabricated warmth. She tapped my father's arm, muttering a quick instruction under her breath. The hostile confrontation was instantly cancelled, replaced by a live performance designed for the press. If the reporter witnessed a fracture in the Dixon family, Spencer's campaign would suffer. They needed to present a united front. They needed to play the role of the benevolent, tolerant patriarchs, extending an olive branch to a troubled, wayward daughter. They breached the low partition of our alcove uninvited. My co-workers, Sarah and Mark, fell silent. They both instinctively sat back in their chairs, recognizing the abrupt change in atmospheric pressure. "Nora, darling," my mother cooed. Her voice possessed an artificial sweetness that grated against my ears. It was loud. It was pitched to carry across the dining room, ensuring the journalist caught the frequency of her manufactured affection. She leaned down, pressing her powdered cheek against my own. I did not lean into the embrace. I remained perfectly rigid. "We were so surprised to see you here today," she continued, standing back up and smoothing the lapels of her cashmere cardigan. "We thought you would be resting after your busy morning." My father stood tall beside her, his hands clasped firmly behind his back. He offered a tight, patronizing nod. He did not look at Leo. His eyes remained fixed on my face, issuing a silent warning to play along with the theater. Vanessa tapped away on her phone, bored by the interaction, clearly viewing my presence as a tedious interruption to her afternoon. "It has been a productive morning," I replied, my voice level and calm. "The legal proceedings concluded without a single complication. I am celebrating with my team." Diane placed a manicured hand over her heart, adopting the expression of a long-suffering martyr. "Oh, sweetheart, you know we worry about you. We worry about the massive burden you have placed upon your own shoulders. But we want you to know that despite your choices, we will always keep a place for you. We are family." She turned slightly, ensuring her profile was visible to the center table. She was giving a masterclass in passive aggression, painting my adoption of an orphan child as a tragic character flaw that required her saintly forgiveness. To complete the performance, Diane reached into her expensive leather handbag. She pulled out a small cellophane-wrapped gift. "We brought you a little something to brighten your day. A small token of our continued love." She handed me a delicate, silver-framed photo. Inside, a picture of Spencer, Vanessa and me as children, smiling brightly. It was a calculated insult, a reminder of the family I was supposedly abandoning. I took the frame, my fingers brushing against hers, and placed it carefully on the table. "Thank you, Mother," I said, my voice still calm. "It's a lovely gesture." Then I shifted Leo slightly on my hip, positioning him so his face was visible to my family. "And speaking of family," I continued, "I'd like you all to meet Leo. He's officially a Dixon now." My mother's smile faltered, her eyes widening as they locked onto Leo's face. My father's jaw tightened, his gaze darting from Leo to me, then back to Leo. Vanessa, finally looking up from her phone, gasped softly. The air in the alcove grew thick with unspoken recognition. Leo, sensing the sudden tension, buried his face into my shoulder, his bright blue eyes peeking out from behind my hair. What a beautiful child," my mother stammered, her voice losing its artificial sweetness. My father, usually so composed, looked utterly bewildered. He kept staring at Leo, a flicker of something akin to horror in his eyes. "He is, isn't he?" I said, my voice still light but with an edge of steel. "He has the most striking blue eyes, just like Spencer's." The words hung in the air, a bell tolling the truth. My mother paled, her hand flying to her mouth. My father's face went ashen. Vanessa dropped her phone, the clatter echoing in the sudden silence. The journalist at Spencer's table, alerted by the commotion, looked over, his recorder still running. Spencer, who had been oblivious until now, finally turned, drawn by the sudden quiet. He saw his parents' stunned faces, his sister's dropped phone, and then his gaze fell upon Leo. His eyes, so like Leo's, widened in disbelief, then in dawning horror. He saw the baby's face, the familiar curve of his nose, the exact shade of blue in his eyes. He saw himself, a miniature, innocent version, sitting on my hip. "No," Spencer whispered, his voice cracking. "No, it can't be." My father, recovering slightly, tried to take control. "Nora, what is the meaning of this? This is preposterous. Is it, father?" I asked, my voice now firm, unwavering. "I have the DNA results, I have the medical records. And I have the property tax records for a small motel room, paid for in cash, where a young woman named Claire gave birth to a baby boy 14 months ago. A young woman who coincidentally was dating Spencer at the time." The journalist at Spencer's table was now openly staring, his pen poised over his notebook. Spencer looked like a deer caught in headlights, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before our eyes. My mother began to weep, quiet, desperate sobs. My father's face was a mask of fury and fear. "You knew," Spencer accused, his eyes fixed on me.
You knew all along.
"I knew," I confirmed. "I found out when Claire, a former patient of mine, came to the clinic desperate for help. She was sick, alone, and terrified. She told me everything. How you promised her the world, then gave her cash to disappear when she told you she was pregnant. How you threatened her, told her to abort the baby, or you'd ruin her life. Claire, a brave young woman, had chosen to keep her child, but the stress and lack of prenatal care had taken their toll. Leo was born prematurely with severe health issues. Claire, unable to cope, had placed him for adoption. And I, seeing his file at the clinic, recognizing the distinctive blue eyes from a photo Claire had shown me, had put the pieces together." The journalist, sensing a scoop, was now on his feet, walking towards our table. "Mr. Dixon," he called out to Spencer, "is this true? Are you denying paternity of this child?" Spencer stammered, trying to formulate response, but no words came. His political career, built on a foundation of family values, was imploding before his eyes. My father, seeing the public spectacle, stepped forward, his voice low and menacing. "Nora, you will regret this. You will lose everything. I already lost everything that mattered to me when you disowned me for wanting to give a sick child a home," I countered, my gaze unwavering. "But what I gained, father, is far more valuable than any Dixon inheritance. I gained a son, and I gained the truth." The journalist was now interviewing Claire, who had been sitting quietly at a nearby table, summoned by me earlier. She confirmed every detail, her voice clear and strong. She even dropped her multi-carat engagement ring, a hush-money gift from Spencer, into a glass of ice water, sending a clear message. The truth, long buried, was now out in the open, shattering the Dixon family's carefully crafted image. That day, the Dixon dynasty, built on secrets and lies, began to crumble. Spencer's campaign was ruined, my parents' social standing was irrevocably damaged. And I, Nora Dixon, walked out of that bistro, not with a heavy heart but with a light one, holding my son, Leo, knowing that I had finally broken free from the toxic legacy of my family. I had chosen love, truth, and genuine family values over wealth, reputation, and deceit. And in doing so, I had found my true home. The story of the Dixon family serves as a profound illustration of the great peril of raising children without emotional awareness. When parents prioritize optics over authenticity, they fail to provide the long-term guidance a child actually needs to navigate the moral complexities of the world. Richard and Diane groomed Spencer to be a golden heir, but in doing so, they stripped him of his humanity. They taught him that his worth was tethered strictly to his public achievements and his ability to project a flawless image. More dangerously, they taught him that accountability was something you could simply purchase your way out of. When Spencer handed an envelope of cash to a desperate pregnant girl, he was merely executing the exact conflict resolution strategy his father had modeled for him 10 years prior. True family responsibility cannot be bought, and it certainly cannot be inherited through a bank transfer. It is forged in the quiet, unglamorous moments that no one else sees. It is found sitting under the harsh, buzzing fluorescent lights of an emergency room at 3 late in the morning, holding an oxygen mask over a struggling infant's face. It is the conscious daily choice to place another human being's well-being above your own comfort. Nora Dixon understood this fundamental truth. She recognized that bringing a child into your life, whether through biology or through the profound choice of adoption, is a sacred vow to be their shield, not their stage manager. In a society that frequently rewards the loud, the wealthy, and the performative, we often forget that honesty and fairness are the only load-bearing pillars, schemes of sustaining a family through generational storms. Spencer built a political campaign on the platform of family values. Yet his foundation was constructed entirely on a buried lie. He abandoned his own son to protect a career trajectory. But lies, no matter how deeply they are buried in transient motel or hushed payoffs, possess a corrosive nature. They rot the structure from the inside out. When Claire dropped her multi-carat engagement ring into a glass of ice water, she was not just rejecting a man. She was rejecting a legacy devoid of fairness. She recognized that a family operating without truth is merely a cartel bound by shared secrets. Raising children with emotional awareness means giving them the tools to face their own reflections without flinching. It requires the courage to say, "We make mistakes, but we own them." If Spencer had been raised in a home where honesty was valued over reputation, the tragedy of the motel might never have occurred. He might have possessed the moral fortitude to stand by the mother of his child. Instead, he was raised to fear the loss of his status more than the loss of his soul. Nora broke that toxic lineage the moment she walked away from the mahogany dining table. By choosing a sick, abandoned boy over $1 billion inheritance, she redefined what it means to protect a bloodline. She protected Leo not by hiding him behind wrought iron gates, but by removing him entirely from the poisoned soil of his ancestors. The long-term guidance she will offer him will not consist of lessons on how to crush a rival or silence a liability. It will be rooted in the quiet strength of knowing you are loved precisely as you are, asthma and all, without conditions or corporate expectations. The story of the Dixon family serves as a mirror held up to our own lives. We must ask ourselves what we are truly passing down to the next generation. Are we handing them a heavy silver money clip engraved with expectations they can never fulfill? Or are we giving them the emotional vocabulary to navigate a difficult world with integrity? If you find yourself reflecting on the quiet battles you have fought to protect your own peace, and if you believe that earned justice is the most satisfying resolution of all, I invite you to join our community. Drop a comment below with your own thoughts on what truly makes a family and hit that subscribe button to follow Aura Vengeance. We specialize in stories where the truth refuses to stay buried, and where the quiet ones finally get the last word. We all have a seat at a table somewhere. We all inherit something from the people who came before us. And we all decide what to serve to the people who come next. When the plates are finally cleared, the lights dim, and the grand performances of our lives draw to a close, what will remain in the empty chairs? Will it be the heavy, suffocating silence of secrets we were too afraid to confess? Or will it be the simple, enduring peace of a life lived in the light, where nothing needs to be hidden, and no one is ever left to weather the storm alone?